Up. Proverbs chapter 21. Proverbs chapter 21, we'll look at verse 1. Hopefully we'll cover the last couple of points on this lesson. Proverbs chapter 21 and verse 1, it says, "The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, as the rivers of water. He turneth it whithersoever he will." And so we find that if the king's heart basically is in the hand of the Lord, prayer can change the hearts of men. Because if we're praying to God and the king's heart is in his hand, if you think about it, Moses and Pharaoh. Yes, Moses went to Pharaoh, said, "Let my people go." And Pharaoh's like, "Nope, not a chance." I mean, come on. If you were Pharaoh, would you give away free labor? I don't think I would. And so then that's when the plague started. And then finally, after the last plague, Pharaoh's heart was turned, and he let the people go, but then he changed his mind and came out after them. But modern times, I can think of different people in our life that when we had the church in Darwin and we were in Palmerston, we met at Charles Darwin University campus, which is a funny story in and of itself, to come to church at Charles Darwin University. The funniest thing was when we held a creation conference at Charles Darwin University. That was fun, to have the speakers have, a couple of the noted speakers walk in. They did not miss it, because when they walked in, you had to walk by Charles Darwin's photograph to come into the meeting room. And they looked at it, laughed, and said, "Do you know what I'm teaching today?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's part of why we're doing it." And he's like, "That's fun." And so off we went. But we had a security guard, and he would walk the campus. And his name was Dave. And Dave, I also worked on the campus in the library, and Dave was one of those guys no one liked. Do you know what I mean? Like, not that Dave, not this Dave. Dave, most people like this Dave. This is a different Dave, older Dave, big mustache, big guy. But no one liked this guy. I mean, not even the people that worked there. Like, he would come and do his rounds in the library. We would hide in the staff room. You say, why? Because he would want to talk to you. And no one wanted to talk to him. Because all he wanted to do was whinge and complain about everything. And he hated young people, especially children. Okay? So why you're a security guard on a university campus when you hate young people? It's not a good combination. We were always having to tell him, "Dave, you're supposed to be the security guard. You're not supposed to be starting fights. Go to your office. We'll take care of this." And then we would take care of it. Well, when you have a church service with a children's church, what are you going to have? Children. And he didn't like them. And he was always getting mad every week at the children and yelling at the children of the church because they were doing things that children did, like make noise and sing loudly and all the things the kids do back there while we have church service, normal stuff. So I pulled some of the men together and I said, "Here's what we need to do. We need to start praying for Dave." And they were like, "Why?" And I'm like, "Because if God can change the hearts of men, let's pray that happens." I said, but then I told my wife, and my wife said, "Let's do two things. You know how they say the way to a man's heart is through his stomach?" We took that as a literal thing. We said, let's pray for Dave, and let's feed Dave. So every Sunday, we would make a plate of morning tea, and I found out he liked coffee, and I found out how he liked his coffee. And so every Sunday, I would take a different group of children with me. They would carry the food, I would carry the coffee. We'd find Dave and say, "Hey, Dave, how's it going this morning? We have something for you. The children would like to give you a snack. Is that okay?" "Oh, I love food." And so he would take the snack, and I'd give him his coffee. And after about 3 or 4 months of this every Sunday, Dave started meeting us at the door. Hey, how's it going? So good to have your church here. I hope the kids are here today. They're such lovely children. And we thought, who is this? But then on top of that, one day I'm working in the library. It's a Monday morning. Dave wasn't on that Sunday, so Dave comes into the library doing his rounds. All my coworkers run to the break room. The boss runs to her office. All the doors shut. You hear click, 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 click. All the doors lock. And I just thought, I'm going to try this. I'm going to sit at my desk. So I sat at my desk right at the front, and he walked by. He said, hey, Pastor Joe, how's it doing? I'm good. And you, Dave, how's it going? He goes, yeah, sorry I wasn't on yesterday. I always try to be on Sundays now because I really enjoy your church and the people in your church. And every now and then I'll stand in the hallway and listen. I said, oh, so you're sitting in the hallway and listening? Yeah, every now and then. And I'm like, okay, cool. And he's like, I really missed the morning tea. And I said, oh, well, the leftover morning tea I brought to work. It's in the break room. You want to come with me? Kind of a twofold purpose there. So I went, and I went to open the break room door, and he goes, huh, that's weird. It's locked. I unlocked the building before. Not to worry. Takes his keys out and unlocks the door and lets us in. And all my coworkers are going, and he's like, so you're not on by yourself? And I'm like, apparently I'm not on by myself. This all disappeared. And they're like, giving me the eye. And they're like, what's going on? And I'm like, I was just offering Dave some morning tea and a cup of coffee. You want some coffee, Dave? He's like, yeah, I love a cup of tea. So we made him a cup of coffee, gave him a plate of food, and he said, we'll see you later. And I'm like, I'll see you later. He goes, I'm on this Sunday. See you Sunday. And I'm like, we'll see you Sunday. And he walked away. And my boss came out and goes, what'd you do to Dave? And I said, I'll tell you what we did to Dave. She said, what? I want to know. I said, we've been praying for him for 3 months, and we have fed him and given him coffee every Sunday for 3 months. But he hates children. I'm like, yeah, not when they're giving him food. He's learned to love them because they give him food. And she was a Christian, and she goes, so you've been praying for him and feeding him? I said, yeah, because you know why? And he said, why? And I said, man's heart is in the hand of God. And he can change people. And she goes, some people I thought were unchangeable, but I've just got proof, and I just got a lesson. And I'm like, okay. So now we stopped avoiding Dave, and Dave was cool. Like, you say, why? We fed Dave, and Dave was okay. And he ended up being okay with the church all the way up into the, all those type of things. But I've seen that happen firsthand. Hey, pray. God can change people. God can change man's heart. And someone that could be completely oppositional, and you may even consider an enemy. Here's another lesson I've learned. If I pray for someone who I think doesn't like me and I classify them as an enemy, it changes how I see them. Try it sometime. When you pray for someone, it changes how you see them. Because you don't see them as this mean, nasty person. You see him as someone, oh, I'm praying for that one. I'm invested in that person. And so let me challenge you that prayer moves the heart of God. Now also, Isaiah chapter 59, this kind of goes along with that. But Isaiah chapter 59, we'll look at verse 1. Behold, the Lord's hand is not shortened that it cannot save, neither his ear heavy that it cannot hear. Can I tell you this? Prayer moves the very hand of God. And prayer can move the very hand of God and cause him to work or not work, right? And again, you think of how God changed and moved, the very hand of God moved in Israel's life and in captivity. Because when Moses first came and said to the people, I'm going to lead you out, did they really want Moses? Kind of a yes and no question. You know what I mean? They liked the concept of getting out of slavery, but they didn't necessarily like the choice or the person. Well, you say, why? Moses had a history, didn't he? Moses had a past. Just so, can God use someone with a past? 100%. God can change people. But prayer can actually move the hand of God and can work in different situations and can do that. So I think we need to remember in the power of prayer is that one of the reasons why we pray for things is God can actually move prayer can actually move the very hand of God and working in a situation. I can think of time and time again where when we were starting this church, we first came and approached the school. I remember Sylvester and I rang the school and we approached the school about hiring these facilities for church. And they said, no, you can't. And I said, why? They said, there's another church that meets here. And when they're gone, we don't know if we will ever hire to another church again because we don't like how they handle things. And I thought, okay. So we walked away. And based on that comment, I said to Sylvester, I said, that church won't be there long. He said, why? And I said, if they're already that upset with that church that they probably will never hire to another church again, it probably is not going to be a lasting relationship there. And he went, okay. So we kept looking and 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 we kept looking. And one day he looked at me, it had been a month and a half. He says, have you called the school back? And I said, no, they're not renting to us. They've already told us no. They've already said after that church leaves, they'll never rent to another church again. And he goes, but have you called them back? And I said, no. He goes, he picks up my phone, gets the school's number up, searches it on Google, hits call, while it's ringing, puts it in my hand. And I said, and he said, you got to talk to him now. I'm like, okay. Because he even went through the whole, press 1 for administration office, and he waited till the person answered and identified it was Mango Hill State School, puts it in my hand. So what do you do? So I talked to the lady. Come to find out, 2 things had happened. The church was no longer meeting here, and they had just got a new business manager who had no knowledge of their previous dealings with the church. 2 different things. His hand had completely worked. And the new business manager was very interested in having someone who would rent every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, and said, sure, we'll give you a go. And I said, you're kidding me. She said, no, why would I be kidding you? I said, when can we view the place? She said, when do you want to? He's looking at me going, now. And I went, does now work? She said, how far are you? I said, we're about 30 minutes away. She said, okay, how about 1 o'clock? I said, okay, we'll be there at 1 o'clock. We were there at 12:50, sitting in the office. And he looks at me and he goes, if it's good, we're not leaving here without signing a contract. And I said, but what about the deposit? He goes, I already have the check. And I said, what? He goes, I already talked to pastor. We already have the check. It's already signed. And I'm like, but you don't know how much to deposit for? He goes, it doesn't matter. It's already signed. And I was like, huh? He goes, don't worry. We got it. So we went through, we looked at the building and that building over there, and it was good, and we talked to them, and I came back and I said, now what do I need to do to put a hire in? And she goes, you need to fill out an application. Sylvester goes, where's the application? She goes, here it is. You can bring it back anytime. He's like, we're not leaving until it's filled. And she goes, okay, well, have a seat. Here's a pen. She goes, but you're going to need some documentation in order to hire this. He goes, what are they? Well, you're going to need to pay a deposit. He goes, got a check. She was like, okay. And you're going to need proof of liability insurance. He goes, I have that. She's like, you brought that to the appointment? He goes, yes. And she's like, okay. If you know Sylvester, this doesn't surprise any of you, okay? And so I sat there literally filling out the application. He looked at it. We filled it all out. We put the times in. Start date. I said, when can we start? She goes, when do you want to? And I said, okay, well, we need a little bit of time. So how about in like 3 weeks? She's like, yeah, that's good. Put that date down. So I put the date down. Wrote it, fill it all out. Handed it to her. She goes, okay, that'd be $500 for a deposit. And he goes, hold on. Picks up his phone. Rings. Yep. Okay. Yep. Click. There you go. There's a check. She went, what about the insurance? He goes, here you go. Here's the documentation. And she went, I guess I'll go get the keys. So not only did we look at it, but we walked away with keys to the building within 45 minutes of looking at the building, and it was ours. You say, does prayer move the hand? Does prayer move the hand of God? Yes. How do we get this building? When we were told they would never hire to a church again, and another church was here. Well, the church was gone, and God even changed the business manager to not know of the dealings with the other church. And from that business manager onward, they love dealing with churches now because they've only dealt with us. So can prayer move the hand of God? Yes. Our church being here is a living example of that. And lastly, for this lesson, Matthew chapter 26. Matthew chapter 26. We'll look at verse 41. This is what Jesus says, watch and pray that ye enter not into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. Right? What we can take from that is, hey, prayer brings divine protection. Divine protection. Have you ever, it says watch and pray. Why? They enter not into temptation. Why would you enter into temptation? Well, the spirit is willing, right? The spirit does not want to enter into temptation, right? But the flesh is weak, yes? Have you ever got yourself to a point where you're like, I didn't really want to be doing this and I didn't want to be doing, how did I get here? Well, your flesh is weak, right? Or is that just me? Yeah, I don't know about you, but there's been times I'm in a situation where I'm like, how am I even in this situation? Like, how stupid is this? And you go, yeah, it's pretty dumb. Here I am. You want to find dumb places? Look for me. That's where I'll be, probably. Okay. But prayer for divine protection, there's so many different, if you just, I ask this all the time. Anyone read missionary biographies? Anybody? If you don't, you need to. Because sometimes you'll read accounts of people praying for the missionary, and then the missionary coming back and reporting, and they say, oh, we were praying for you. And they say, oh, when were you praying for us? Oh, on this date at this time. Oh, really? Yeah, really. Well, let me tell you really what was happening at that date at that time. And they share a story. And you're like, you say, why? Because sometimes you can pray for protection for missionaries, for individual people, for different things, and God will answer our prayers and will protect us. And sometimes God protects us in spite of us, right? Has God ever protected you in spite of you? Some of us are all in the same boat. Yes, he has. All right, so there's power in prayer. Now, so we remember, it protects us from temptation. It can protect us from Satan. It can protect us from the world. Prayer can protect your marriage if you're married, have your children if you have children. It can protect our church. All those types of things. Now, how tragic is it that Christians fail to realize the power of prayer? That's the only way I can find that we don't pray how we should, that we don't have the secret place, is because we failed to realize the power of prayer. Hey, as we've seen, prayer obtains material blessings. It has power for service. It gives us wisdom and understanding. It can help give strength to the weary. It can change the hearts of mankind. It can move the hand of God, and it can give us divine protection. And I don't know about you, but if someone were to tell you, this will give you these things, would you be like, sign me up? So pray. That's simple. Pray. There's power in prayer. All right, so hopefully be a reminder to us. And next week, when we come back to this topic, we're going to be looking at the discipline of prayer. Because yes, there's power in prayer, but it takes discipline to pray. Right? Have you ever noticed it takes some discipline? It just doesn't happen by accident. Oh yeah, I'm a Christian now, I'll pray. Yeah, not unless you actually plan to do it, you won't. I promise you. You say, why? Anything in life that's worth something requires discipline, doesn't it? It's a lot of discipline to get up when that alarm goes off. I don't know about you. My natural inclination is to hit snooze or throw. But it takes discipline. We'll get into that next Sunday. All right.